Hey everyone, welcome back to the Bookends podcast episode 2. You're with Rose, and I shall introduce my lovely book partner and co-host.
Hello everyone, thank you. Rose, we came back. The sequel, we came back. They let us back.
So just a quick one, because I know we said this in the first burn, we'll do it again, but just to briefly explain, this is our podcast where we read one of our books of our choice, and then we will be discussing and criticising, I guess, both good and bad points of what we're reading, just a general discussion about the book we're reading and our love of books in general.
Yes, absolutely. And also thanks to Stephen King for not suing us last time. Carry on.
On that subject, Rob, do you want to do our quick the legal?
Oh yeah, so just to say that the views are our own, and we might, like Rose said, we might criticise the book, we might praise it, but it's all our own, it's all subjective, and that is the beauty of books. So feel free to give your opinion on the books and debate with us, and yeah, we welcome it, and looking forward to starting this amazing sequel to the show, Rose.
I think we've agreed that our sort of plan for each week, we'll do a general discussion, different topics each time, before we get into the book that we're reading, just to make it a little bit more interesting, a bit more personality in it, isn't it? Mm-hmm. So this week, Rob, I thought it would be interesting if we perhaps discussed what got us each into reading in the first place.
Okay.
Yeah. So I'm thinking sort of if you've got any, maybe, I don't know if any thoughts spring to mind initially, but perhaps what got you into reading? Is there a particular book that you remember?
Yeah. I think the first ever book I read was obviously at school in comprehension, like Roger Red Hat and was it Kirsty Yellow Hat? Maybe
Jennifer.
It was kind of like a really childish version of the Famous Five, wasn't it? And they would just like go on little adventures, and there'd be like pictures, and it got my imagination set. So that was kind of nice. But the first actual book I remember reading was Goosebumps. It was, I think, Escape to Horrorland or something it was called. It was a bit scary. Well, I was like 12, so I felt like it was a bit dark. It kept me up at night. But I just loved it. Like, I couldn't believe that reading the words on a page would make I could simultaneously do that and like form pictures in my mind of the story. I thought it was absolutely amazing. So much more interesting than like normal TV and stuff. So every week my parents would take me to W.H. Smith's. Is that still around?
Yeah.
Oh, each week, sorry, on a tangent. Yes. Each week would W.H. Smith's, and there'd be a new Goosebumps book in the series, and then I'd beg my parents to buy me them, and they would, and then I used to like draw the front covers and colour them in and stuff, and I had like a folder of all the covers. Absolutely loved it. And then they made it into a movie and stuff, and it again got ruined, but that was later on down the line. But yeah, that was what started my love of books, and it just continued. How about you, Rose?
So similar. I also read the Roger Red Hat and Billy Blue Hat, and yeah. I
thought it was like a Midlands thing.
No. So I had all those and Biff and Chip, and I think you actually touched on quite a good point. But so for me, I think the function of reading changed, didn't it? So when at that time when we were reading those, you're sort of reading to learn to read, aren't you? So they're obviously basic books, they're children's books, but they have pictures. So from an imagination point of view, it wasn't as much. So I think when I was thinking of like the first real book that I read, that was the pictureless book, I guess, that I read. So just text. And I remember it vividly, and I must have been probably the same age as you, like with your Goosebumps. I was probably about 11 or 12. And I remember being sat on my sofa, and I think my mum was doing loads of housework and stuff. And I just remember being like transported, and I was reading The Wizard of Oz, which isn't something that I've ever, like, I didn't know of it before I read the book, I hadn't seen the film.
Sorry, is that quite a hard book to read?
No, it wasn't, from what I remember. But, you know, I've been reading a lot. But sorry, you want to say something else again?
It's not a children's book, though, is it? Isn't it an adult book? It's an adult kind of theme.
Wizard of Oz is one that I remember reading. And I remember it almost felt like his sort of magical ability that you have to be able to go into a book and be, I want to say almost like in a film, but just to be that completely immersed, to then put the book down for whatever the reason was, and felt like you'd been in another world. And I remember that being the first book that I had that experience with, where I could actually be transported by words, if that makes sense, and imagine it all for myself as well, because I hadn't seen the film, as I say, by that point. So it was a lot of obviously fantasy, a lot of description. It was amazing. So that was my first sort of main book that got me into reading, and then it didn't stop. And then when I was at school, obviously my favourite subject at school and up until A levels, I did English literature. And any lesson at school where you could go in and you had silent reading, I remember a lot of people like, oh, I just thought epic. I could just got an hour to just sit and read. Like, that's the best thing ever.
I used to love doing like creative writing at school and like making my own stories up. I used to love that. Interesting though, I didn't actually enjoy English literature that much, because I felt like we were forced to read a book and like really dissect it. And if the book wasn't to my taste, I found it really hard. Like, I found A-level English hard. We read The Handmaid's Tale, and me being like a 16-year-old boy, I couldn't understand like the feminism and all the connotations and stuff, and I found that really a real struggle actually. So I think reading is for fun, and like school and reading together, I found was a juxtaposition, like they parallel to each other. I couldn't ever relax and read a book, so I'd be studying it and it put me off, which is a shame.
I think that's the difference though, isn't it? I guess it's the purpose or the function of reading which changes your experience of it. If you're reading for leisure, it's very different to having to reading for a purpose, like to have to criticize it. Like I liked comparative work, like in English literature where you're comparing one book to the next and themes and stuff, and that was good. But I feel that you don't read it in the same way, because you're reading it to analyze rather reading it to enjoy it.
Yeah, that's my problem. But and I've like gone on and off books kind of over my life and stuff. I suppose if you work in a job where you look at the computer a lot, I find it hard to come home and read a book and stuff. But I'm not doing that as much now, and I feel like I've got more time. I just love it so much.
Nice switch off, isn't it? Nice escape.
So Rose, now we are going to talk about the next part of the book, which is, say it again, Rose.
Secret History by Donna Tartt.
Donna Tartt. Lovely. I will start, Rose, by saying I'm very much enjoying the twists and turns that this book is taking me down.
Isn't it exciting? Do you know what? I think before I even go on to twists and turns, I wanted to say how impressed I am with both of us at how much we've actually read since our last pod. We've been busy.
I find that maybe it's a theme in all books, which another topic we'll talk about one day, is like the first several hundred, well, not 100 words, so we say, all descriptive and setting the scene, and they take a lot longer to read. But once you get into it, the pages just flow by, man, and I love it.
Yeah, I think that's definitely happened this week for us, isn't it? It's just been, and a lot has happened, like a lot. Yeah. I was thinking, oh gosh, I hope Rob doesn't put me on the spot and ask me to summarise what's happened.
No.
Tables are going to turn.
No. So as we predicted in the first book, there's been a sinister turn, and our characters are not what they appear to be. They've been a bit, well, I'll say very naughty, Rose, haven't they? Because they have.
Well, are we going to jump straight to that?
Okay,
spoiler,
no. Go on, no. If you want to.
Well, I'm just thinking where we left off, wasn't it? Is that we'd only really got close to Bunny. So Richard had been drinking with Bunny and had left, and Henry had said the whole frustrations with Bunny because he does these big lavish, invites you out for this thing and then forgets his wallet, and Henry covers the bill, etc. So now I feel in a very, for want of a better word, I feel very frustrated for Richard and us, because obviously we are Richard in the book, being written in first person, so obviously that's the experience you get. But I feel really frustrated, and I feel like there's a little bit of, and this is quite a term for me to use, and it's usually something that you get in personal relationships, which I appreciate, but you can get it in very dominant friendships. But I feel there's quite a gaslighting element going on with Richard and the friends. By that I mean there's this sort of element where it's almost like they bring him into their friendship group. They initially are very clear that they don't want him there, and then he impresses them, so they think, okay, you can join us. And then they go away for the holiday and they're in this big lavish house together, and they really embrace him as part of the family, like their friendship family in that sense. And they're he's having these sort of really deep one-to-ones with them, drinking, smoking outside to the early hours, like having these really really immersive experiences with them, to the point that they're even talking about, oh, when we're older we can all live here, and when we leave school. So you get completely sucked in, and then suddenly they're not there. Like, things are happening that they're deliberately excluding us, like Richard and us, from. And he's just left feeling like there is literally a sentence here, which I'm hoping that I can find it now that we're recording. There's a bit he says, so all this has happened, and he's not, like, they've had this amazing trip in the country, and then he comes back to school, but he's not heard from any of them. None of them have come back. The twins are late coming back. He's no idea what's going on. He tries to ring Henry, I think, as well, and he doesn't answer. Doesn't, so he's completely lost. And then he goes to bed and he says, I was tired, but I couldn't sleep. My irritation and perplexity were growing stronger, kept in motion by a ridiculous sense of unease. And I think that's sort of how you feel, because you think something's happening, but then when he approaches them or acknowledges that something is off, they just act like nothing's wrong. And I think that's the gaslighting element, where it's almost making him feel that it's him that's the problem, or he shouldn't be feeling the way he's feeling.
Yeah, well, as you said, we are him, aren't we? And I felt like it's something that he had done wrong or whatever before I knew what had happened. But then on the flip side of that, they've been established friends for years by the sounds of it. He's come into their circle. They enjoy all the nice bits, but then they've committed something terrible and they don't trust him enough to let him know, do they? So I guess they're kind of in turmoil. Like, what do? We can't let him in. We've done something terrible. We can't trust him, but we do like him. So I can see both points, but as Richard, it's like we just lost it for a while. Yeah,
but on that, like, before the big thing that happens, when they're in the house, they're planning everything. When you remember, they're planning stuff, because he hears Camilla and Charles talking about the bed sheets, and then there's that big pot of the boiling liquid, and he asks Henry directly what it is, and he said it's for his bath. But it isn't. You find out later that they've been planning this big, I can't remember now what the word is, but that big spiritual,
call it a ritual,
like frenzy, drunken, ecstasy-filled thing that they said they do know, and they're deliberately not telling him. So
I'm surprised actually that they didn't include him in that, because I don't see why they wouldn't have said, oh, we're going to do this really cool thing, you can join us if you want to. I'm surprised they didn't actually. Just before we get to that, the cool bit though, what do you think about the paragraphs? Well, sorry, the chapters after Bunny and him getting drunk, where like Richard's he almost dies, doesn't he, from like pneumonia and things. I felt that was a very drastic thing to happen.
It was, but again, it really isolates him, doesn't it? One minute they're all really close, and then they've got this other break, and they've all got plans, and no one seems to acknowledge that Richard has nowhere to go. They write to him, but no one really cares what's going on with him, and it's a bit of a they all go away for the summer, and he's on his own, and then he's got nowhere. He can't. Well, is it a dorm that he's staying in? Yeah, it's like halls, isn't it?
And he can't stay in the hall, so he stays in like this musician's house and the ceiling's open, and like it's freezing inside. There's no heating, and each day goes by, and he's shivering more and more, and he almost dies. I felt a very, very strange turn, like very drastic. Surely he could have gone home or something. But,
well, I think the halls were shut, weren't they?
Yeah.
So he can't sleep at the uni. He couldn't. But this is the thing. It's almost like he's friends with them, but he's not friends enough to be honest to say that he needs somewhere to stay. So it's quite the dynamic is very odd. He's a very lonely person, isn't he?
Yeah, no, that's true. And there's so many things going on. We're thinking, where are they all? Very out of the loop. It's like, it's not I can relate too much, like when you're at school and all your friends go off for like a smoking break, and you're there back on your own, and then they come back and then they're all talking about the gossip, and you're there on your own, like,
but that's it. That's exactly how it makes you feel. And I think that's why I felt really frustrated with it, because it's a really horrible feeling to have, and that's sort of what's been happening on and off throughout the book so far.
So then how does it come about that Henry tells us? Oh, so our man Richard goes back to get his school books from Henry's place. This is when the semester, is it started again? Are they all back? Or no, they're still away.
No, Henry and Bunny are away still. He goes back to Henry's to get his books from his place. And
then he sees a post-it note with I didn't realise what it was until he rang the operator, but it was like a flight, wasn't it, to Argentina? And we're thinking, why is Henry going to Argentina of all places? And then, so I think somehow Henry's clever, isn't he? He finds out that our man Richard knows about the flight, and then Henry starts going on.
Yeah, so Richard rings the number, doesn't he? And it's an estate agent and he pretends to be Henry, and the lady on the other end basically confirms the flight is for 4 people. So it's not even Henry going alone. He's obviously going with others, which excludes Bunny, actually, which is interesting, isn't it? So it's Henry, Francis, Camilla, and Charles that he's booking this. That he's
not, yeah. Just to say, Camilla and Charles, that's a coincidence. It's not to do with their old family. Massive coincidence.
That's true. I didn't think.
I wondered that. So yeah. So then Henry realizes that Richard knows, and then Henry takes him to one side, and then awkwardly tells him that they're doing a big ritual because they're into all this Greek stuff, and one of the what is it like what is it the how do I say, the very best thing they can do, or the epiphany they can have or something when they're doing these crazy rituals, and they can be close to a certain Greek god. I googled this.
Yeah, it's a I think it's called a bacchia, and it's like this. They try and create this like sort of madness, isn't it? Like a deliberate sense of madness to free you from yourself, and it's like a drunken induced celebratory thing where you can then see spirits and gods and things.
It's all very like not, I won't say biblical, but it's all like in the Greek history that it's a real thing. I did look into it. It's very interesting.
Yeah.
But they're trying these rituals each day, and they're trying to get to this place mentally where they need to be, and they just can't get there. Sometimes they drink too much alcohol and just get drunk and then fall asleep, and other days they just don't feel it enough.
Yeah, but it happens. They do have that, and I think Henry he comes back, doesn't he, not long after Richard's near-death experience, and takes Richard in, and that's when he explains where he's been, because I think he's put in a position where he's backed into a corner, really, isn't he? He's with Richard on his own. Richard confronts him about it, and Henry says, this is what we've been doing, this is what we did. But in the midst of this whole frenzy and this whole sort of euphoria state that then the 4 of them get themselves into, are you happy for me to? Do you want to say?
Should we do another drum roll? If you don't want it spoiled, then please switch off now, guys. But we have to talk about these things. It's a book review, and it's the main segment of it. So Henry reveals to Richard. It's a drum roll on my laptop.
Okay. So he reveals that during this they killed a man. And what was interesting with this is it's obviously not Bunny, because Bunny's still around at this point. So at the beginning of the book, we know that Bunny's dead, and now suddenly some random guy is dead, and it wasn't quite clear how he died. I know they mention about his quite serious head injury and whatever, but they don't know who did it, how it happened. And in short, sorry, your face tells me.
I thought it said I thought Henry admitted that he flailed his arms out and started punching. Next thing I know, he had brain splattered on his hand and stuff. But then it said that Francis also was pulling something, which could have been the guy's arm.
I know, so, that's what I mean. I'm not sure, but they were
absolutely out of it, man, to be doing that. I mean, I've been drunk before, but never enough to
kill a person.
Yeah, I promise. Yeah.
But then they've panicked and all come back to the school or the university, as it is, and. Yeah, but I thought what was the strangest thing is that it's almost like there's not really any reaction. Like the way that he speaks, in fact, the way that all of them speak is so, I don't know, it's not deadpan, but they're just like, there's no, it's very odd, isn't it?
They would totally have just pushed it under the carpet if it wasn't for Bunny finding out. They would have just been like, oh, that was a terrible thing, won't do that again, and just moved on, which says a lot about how callous and disrespectful these boys are. As much as I already like Henry in this, I'm warming to him, but also it's shocking what they're doing.
Yeah, but there's also, we wouldn't know about it if it wasn't for Bunny's slight comments, because I think Bunny's slightly onto them, isn't it?
Yeah.
And now you're kind of at a point where Henry is, and the rest of them are almost buying Bunny's silence.
Yeah. So Bunny finds out. We won't go into how he finds out, but he finds out basically, and then he's appalled, and then he's sort of like, I think, subtly blackmailing them by getting Henry to buy him loads of things and stuff. I still don't think Bunny would ever have the balls to tell anyone about it, but he's uncomfortable with it. Just before we go into a bit about Bunny, Rose, how did you feel that when I was reading the segments before we found out that they'd murdered someone? I felt really I got chills when Henry was saying to Richard, you already know what's happened, don't you? And I was thinking, I think I do know. I think in my head it was that they'd murdered someone subconsciously. Because what else could it be? What else is as dark as that? It wouldn't have been like, what else could it, well, actually, yeah, what else could it have been?
Yeah, I think at one point Richard like makes some sort of, he's guessing, isn't he? And he says something about, is it that they think there was some sort of love interest or whatever that was rebuffed? And I thought, no, it's something, it's bigger than that. It can't just be that for all of them to be involved and to be as impacted as it they have.
It couldn't be anything else but murder, I don't think. I was trying to rack my brains. I was thinking, God, that is what this is alluding to. They've killed someone, and I just felt very dark, and I got the chills, and I love that. It was like that impending sense of doom was just coming straight out at us, and I loved it. I felt Richard's anguish all the time.
Yeah, but now he's involved in it, and again there's this other. I don't know if I'll have time to find the quote now, so you might have to.
As you're looking for that, Rose, I'll say, like, automatically I'm like thinking, right, let's get through this. Let's hide the evidence. Let's. I'm on the side of these boys and Richard. But now as we're talking, I'm thinking, oh, Bunny, you're overreacting, just keep your mouth shut. But now I'm talking to you, I'm thinking we should be on Bunny's side, because Bunny's, I guess, the moral compass, and he's not happy that they've murdered someone. Why am I automatically on the side of Henry and everyone, thinking let's get through this? Because Bunny's right. Bunny should be reporting it to people. Why do I hate Bunny when he's the moral high ground?
I know, but at the same time I kind of feel that because Bunny's like gaining from all of this, I don't like him in that sense. There's something, and he's also not very intelligent, so I'm not quite sure why he's at the university. And there was a comment, there is a bit right at the beginning about when he's explaining why Julian, how he picks his people, and he picks them on their personality, not their academic sort of abilities. And I'm wondering why Bunny was picked, because from my point of view there's not a lot of endearing qualities about Bunny. He's not very bright, he's not very loyal in a sense. True.
He's not like the others, is he? But at first we think he is, because he wears all the clothes like the rest of them, but actually he's more of a bit of a simpleton, isn't it, actually? And he hasn't got the money that the other kids have got. And
but it's weird because they've now pulled Richard into all this. All this madness has happened that Richard, bless him, probably had no idea what he was getting into. But now he is, whether he likes it or not, one of them, and he's now he's sort of complicit in what's happened, and he doesn't know what to do. But I have found the paragraph, so when you're ready, I will read it.
Go on.
This is after Richard just had the conversation with Henry. He's told him they've killed someone, just paying Bunny to shut him up, and then they've played cards. Henry's gone to bed. Richard's woke in the morning, realised what on earth, thought he's dreamt it, and he hasn't, and he's left Henry's house flat. So he's now literally just left the door. So this is him sort of, again, like you said, Rob, last week, Richard's older when he's writing this book, isn't he? So he's reflecting back. So he said, I suppose if I had a moment of doubt at all, it was then, as I stood in that cold, eerie stairwell looking back at the apartment from which I had come. Who were these people? How well did I know them? Could I trust any of them, really, when it came right down to it? Why, of all people, had they chosen to tell me? It's funny, but thinking back on it now, I realised that it was this particular point in time, as I stood there blinking in the deserted hall, was the point at which I might have chosen to do something very different from what I actually did. But of course I didn't see this crucial moment then for what it was. I suppose we never do. Instead, I only yawned and shook myself from the momentary daze that had come upon me and went on my way down the stairs.
Ooh, that's good. So it was a turning point in his life.
It is, but it's not a moment. It's not a turning point at the time. It's one of them, like, hindsight's a wonderful thing, but he's already aware that what on earth am I doing? Like, he's in too deep.
Well, how many times in our lives has this happened? Where at the time it's a turning point. No, at the time you don't think it is, but looking back, it is. It's a you're making a move here. Yeah. And you're sticking to it. Yeah. It's interesting.
And I think what's really weird is the contrast between your paragraph last time was like this amazing dinner and everyone's together and he's found his place and they're clinking glasses to their future and it's forever and this is it. And now, like, here we are a week later, a few chapters down the line, and he's like, what on earth? What is happening? And I think we're almost halfway through the book.
It's just, it's dark, it's sinister. I feel chills, like, thinking about it, really.
Yeah.
Sounds a bit dramatic, but I do.
It's not. It's really good. I just think what's going to happen.
at the same time, like they have, they shouldn't have got drunk and been so out of it. I mean, the worst case scenario has happened, but they should have thought about that before they did it. They don't know what they're dealing with by getting drunk, high, and all that, and praying to the Greek gods. They are responsible for it. So really, I should be saying no. They should all be going to jail. But my book mind says no. Let's keep it a secret.
I think the dynamic, the relationship with the five is bizarre. I've been trying to work this out. So yeah, I've been with the dynamics with the characters. They say if Richard's 28 when he's reflecting, so when the book starts, when he actually goes there, he says that he's been at high school, college for 2 years, and now he's at Hampton. So I'm trying to think that college would be the equivalent of our sort of the UK sixth form. So he's about 18. So I'm thinking unless the five main other guys have been friends all through school, how do they have they've just started surely the same as Richard has. So I'm trying to understand their bond. Like
I feel like they've been friends before that though. I don't the parents all know each other and stuff. I don't know.
I can't remember. I'm trying to work it out. But they definitely seem to have a lot more in jokes, private stuff than with Richard. So
absolutely. So obviously we know that Bunny dies. So my predictions are they're going to want him out the way and to make it look like an accident, I imagine. How do you think the rest of the book's going to go? What's going to happen? I feel like there'll be the plot and how to get rid of him. But like, what do you think? What else do you think will happen?
I'm not sure. I think you're right, but I feel like it's too early on for Bunny's death to happen because I don't know then what the rest of the book will be about.
I feel like he'll get more and more extreme and closer to accidentally telling someone, and then they'll start plotting how to bump him off. That's what I reckon.
Possibly. I think there's going to be more with Julian. I think there has to be because I think there's the odd thing is before Henry comes back, he stayed with Julian, didn't he, for a few days, which I think is odd. I think that there's an odd. Wasn't there a bit that Richard saw between Julian and Henry that was almost romantic, but may not have been? I'm not quite sure. So I don't know whether Julian's going to be sort of play a bigger part in the next few chapters. I'm not sure whether he'll be aware of what's going on.
Yeah, I'm surprised. We said last week, didn't we, that it's going to be a lot more about Julian and how he gets these people together. But Julian hasn't been mentioned a lot. And like you said, I feel like that'll come. And that's a really interesting way of doing it. I feel like Julian will be like the father figure and everything else will spawn from him and his views, but it's not at the moment. So then another prediction I've just had after you said that brilliant segment there is I reckon the kids will go to Julian and say, like, this is the problem with Bunny. And then they'll have some massive philosophical discussion about happiness and the least, the least harm to the least amount of good and all that sort of stuff. And he'll help him bump Bunny off. But Julian's got a massive part to play in this for sure. Yeah,
interesting you say that. There's not one part of me that thinks Julian will sort of scold them for what's happened or be disappointed. No. I think he'll be quite excited that they've got this. Especially with the whole God thing and the. I think he'd be really interested in knowing how they achieved that and whether he's even encouraged it. I don't know.
I reckon he might lure Bunny into a full sense of security and then they'll bump him off, which is a shame. But yeah, he's definitely got a huge part. So otherwise, it'd just be why introduce Julian at all? Why not just be about a group of kids that love Greek? Like he's got to have an integral part to this. But I'm just surprised the way it's gone. I expected it to go down one thread and it hasn't. Another reason for the beauty of books, I guess.
Yeah, I'm trying not to too many predictions because it's actually quite nice having no idea what's happened, just having
exactly.
Yeah.
Love it. And again, like I don't want to keep talking about the medium of books versus TV, but like the whole segment where oh god, what's that man's name? Not Henry, the other one, Richard.
Yeah.
Where he's like freezing his bum off in like when he's going to sleep and stuff. I even felt cold in the room. I know it's a winter's time as well, but I felt cold and I felt that like. It was a sad time and I felt that anguish for like as I was reading the chapters. It took me about 2 or 3 days. I felt that. Whereas if I watched that in a movie, it'd be maybe like a scene for like 2 minutes and it'd be gone. So like this whole story could be told in a movie within an hour, but you'd never get the development of the characters. You'd never get the time to really think, oh, what's going to happen? This is exciting, you know? And I just, books are so amazing.
Yeah. I think what's really nice as well is because well, as you know, I read a lot and usually I'd have probably sped through this and I'd have probably maybe not. Sorry.
You're a nerd.
I know.
A joke.
I own it. I don't care.
Yeah, we are.
Yeah, I think I would have read this a lot quicker if it wasn't for you. And it's actually really nice that we're reading it together and we're sort of agreeing agree in a chapter, and this time you've stuck to it, and I think I'm maybe a little bit slightly ahead of you at the minute this time round, but it's actually nice because it gives me that break and to actually process what's happening instead of just going straight into it. I'm thinking I'm going to wait and we're going to discuss this on Sunday, whereas if we hadn't got the book club, and you wonderful listeners out there, all those hundreds and thousands,
we said millions last
time.
We
did say millions. I've sort of dropped my expectations throughout the last week. Okay, but to everyone out there, it is just really nice to have a reason to break it up and have a stop and think about it. And I think it just gives you time to process it and analyze it more than if we're just
and again to have the discussions. I've thought about different points after you've told me your thoughts and stuff, and I've thought about different questions and different perspectives. So that's why discussions are so good to have, aren't they? Absolutely love it. And there's no right or wrong really, is there? In I suppose in books there are certain right and wrongs, but in this it's just subjective opinions at the moment and speculation, and I love that.
It's nice. It is. That's the thing with it. Like, and again, this will be a separate pod, as I know, because we've got a lot to say about it. But when you read, there isn't a right and wrong. No one's telling you how to imagine someone. Well, to an extent, it gives you a description of someone, but it's for you to decide what someone looks like, or how their voice sounds, or what the rooms look like. You can make the landscapes yourself, and it's just that's the beauty of it.
Actually, you saying that, you said that you found pictures of the characters, and I scolded you terribly. I said, don't do that.
You shocked me. You weren't pleasant. But no, I didn't look at the characters, because quite often I like fan art. Like after I would read a book, I like seeing what people have imagined themselves. But I think for me initially with this, now I'm into it, it's okay, but I had to make a list of each character and what they look like so that I could keep, because I'm very funny when I read, but I like to imagine a character as the author wants me to. So I feel they've given you a description for a reason. And I kept confusing them, and it was frustrating me because I was thinking, am I imagining this person as like the big burly one with the broad? No, it's not him. It's the one with the long coat and the messy hair, whatever it was. So I don't actually think it is a film. Again, I don't want to look it up in case I see faces, but I just thought I'd scan and see if people thought the same as us. And I remember seeing a black and white still of people, but I didn't stand it long enough to taint my view of it. But
I don't think it would work as a film. Like I said, films about character, maybe as a TV, the Netflix series, but it's a lot of character development, isn't it? And not a lot's happening. So I don't think a film would work. But I love it at the moment. It's going fast now. I'm reading more and more. I'm really into it. I love it. And there were so many different people's opinions on this. Like, I'm sure there'll be a lot of people saying, no, like I said, they should be in trouble. They shouldn't have started this ritual. They should be going to jail. Like, why are we trying to defend them? But something like
if that happened, it'd be a very boring book. That's
good point. Very good point.
I also another thing that I thought of last night when I was reading is I also really like the fact that it's in first person, is that you're learning everything third person. Like, you're not there, like if it was a book that was written in third person, we'd be with Richard in his halls feeling lonely and isolated, and then we'd be seeing what's happening with this sort of big, what do we call it, ritual that they're having, and then we'd be going back to Richard, so you'd know what's been going on, so you wouldn't have that period, that sense of isolation. But because you're blind to it as well and are learning it via different characters and getting different versions of what's happened, you're having to piece it together as you go along, and I think that's written really well.
And I like how he's reflecting backwards, so like from what he's happened, like he's older now, isn't he? So like every time the end of a chapter he'll say things like, and I realized that was probably the turning point and all that, and I just love all that. It makes it's more chilling, isn't it? It's like, oh, there they are, young kids in this lovely beautiful mansion, and it all just turns sinister, and then he's looking back over the time thinking this is where it changed, and it's just it's a very good style of doing it. I like that a lot. Very good.
It makes it a very I don't know whether which is the best word, engaging or interactive read. It's just something that keeps you, because you've got different time zones of it, which is really interesting.
Donna Tartt, you're a genius, I'll tell you. Love
join us episode 3 with
a special guest, Donna Tartt. That would be so cool. But
we need to finish the book first.
And we need to
imagine if she spoiled the ending of her own book.
Imagine if we're totally wrong about all of it and it's not what we're thinking. We got it totally wrong. Can you imagine?
But I would love that.
Would you?
I would love that. Yeah, partly because then we could imagine like referencing it back or thinking, God, listen to what, not that we listen to our own podcast, but if we were, and then be like, imagine this is what we were thinking and we were completely wrong. I think I would quite like to be proved wrong, as long as it's got a decent ending.
Yeah, I like that.
If it's got a bad ending, I'll be really angry.
It must be hard for authors to sort of, obviously it's easier to get all the ideas and stuff, but to put it together at the end, like with our book last time, it must be hard to put it all together and have a satisfying conclusion, because some people will always not be happy with the conclusion. So it must be difficult.
So yeah, I guess not to write a book to please everyone.
Yeah. Interesting.
Oh, I'm interested. I'm intrigued.
So just following on from last week then, Rose, where I read out a paragraph of a segment I really liked. You said you've got like a nice paragraph that really sort of sums up the feel of the book at the moment, the writing style and everything. So yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, I think so. I'm hoping that this kind of just ties in or summarises what we're saying about the characters and their sort of, I guess the sort of the oddness of them, and them not quite fitting in, and Richard trying to fit in with them, and the oddness with them and Julian. So yeah, I had this, and I'm hoping it will work. So let me know if it either does or doesn't. If it doesn't, we can
go for it.
Okay. So again, context for it is just Richard talking about the Greek language and Greek philosophy and his love for it. So he says, in a certain sense, this is why I felt so close to the others in the Greek class. They too knew of this beautiful and harrowing landscape, centuries dead, that they'd had the same experience looking up from their books with 5th century eyes and finding the world disconcertingly sluggish and alien, as if it were not their home. It was why I admired Julian and Henry in particular. Their reason, their very eyes and ears were fixed irrevocably in the confines of those stern and ancient rhythms. The world, in fact, was not their home, at least not the world as I knew it, and far from being occasional visitors to this land, which I myself knew only as an admiring tourist, they were pretty much its permanent residents, as permanent as I suppose it was possible for them to be.
Oh, that's good. That's good. She's got a great writing style, hasn't she?
She has. And I just think that really captures where, like, yeah, it is. It's like they're not, I don't want to go as far as they're not part of this world, but they don't quite fit with this world, I find. Like, at least this sort of, I can't think of almost like this, our day and age. It's almost like they're part of another world. Like, you know, we've discussed before, but like the way they dress, the way they speak, their views on stuff, they're very, considering they're meant to be sort of 18, 19.
Yeah.
But they sit around and smoke and drink scotch and play solitaire. And I think that's not a usual.
And it's not like a story of, they want to fit in with everyone else. They're oblivious. They don't care about the other people, which is a pretty cool way to be. They're just, they're unapologetically themselves, and they don't care. In fact, they're snobbery towards the general public and look down on them.
Yeah. But it's strange that just studying Greek as a foreign language would give them this air of sort of.
I mean, and they are filthy rich, most of them. The parents are rich, so maybe that's it.
But I don't know if everybody is at this university. I don't know.
No. But I'm loving it. I really am loving this book.
Yeah.
And I chose it. Let's remember that.
Good choice.
So we can't have a score yet, but like at the end of the thing, if it's a 1-0 to Rob, I'll take that. But we can't do it until we've read it all.
I'm enjoying how smug you are with it, because you've mentioned several times how good it was and that you've chosen it.
The only way it could end up badly now is if he wakes up and it's all a dream. That's the only way I cannot win this one.
We'll bring you back to that if we finish it, and it's not great.
So, Rose, tell us about the socials then. What is happening on our socials?
Not a lot.
Just being put on the spot.
Not a lot. No, not a lot's happening. But in fairness, we've not actually published a pod yet. So I'm hoping when we publish our first pod, which will be tomorrow morning.
Yes.
First, make Monday less Monday-ish.
We're going to put both pods out.
We're going to put 2. Yeah, we're going to treat everyone to 2 pods. So first one is obviously our feeler episode, which we sort of put out to try and get feedback. But then we thought, actually, let's just whack 2 out and give it a bash, see what happens.
Yeah.
So I will monitor that. Obviously, we both manage the Bookends podcast on Instagram anyway, but it's going to go on YouTube, and we'll take it from there and see what.
Yeah, but please feel free, like, comment on our. We've got like a little picture of us, haven't we? It's the cartoon one. Comment or private message us on that page about any questions you've got for the pod. It'd be nice for us to like answer some questions about the part of the book that we're on. from viewers and stuff. Make it a little bit more interactive, or give us some recommendations for our general discussion of the week. That would be great. So yeah, I'm looking forward to it. I'll do all the technical bit. Hopefully I can somehow get onto Spotify tomorrow. I'll try. Can't be that hard, right?
We'll see. This is fun. All part of it.
Yeah. No, so next Sunday we'll record and then put it out on Monday. Then we'll have another big discussion and we'll tell you about the next part of the book. Yeah. I reckon we can do it in 2 or 3 more pods. We'll have finished the book for sure.
Yeah.
It's exciting. Yeah. Let us know your thoughts, everybody. It's been a pleasure. Have a lovely week and we'll see you next week.
Yeah. Thanks for listening. And Rob, we best get reading.
Yeah. Bye.
Bye.